Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Broker Capital podcast. Today, we're lucky to be joined by Paterson, who is the founder and director of Auctus Coaching, and he's known as an expert in systems and processes for brokers. Christian, welcome.
Thanks for having me. What day is it today? Wednesday.
Yeah, halfway through the week, mate. We're getting
mate,
there.
It feels like Monday because I've never achieved anywhere near as much as I would like to, just like everybody else who's probably listening today.
100%. Mate, let's get stuck in. I'm curious about your background. You started off in broking, then you moved to ops management, and now you're a coach. Why did you make this transition?
So probably the reason why I originally went from broking to operations was my business partner at the time. All they wanted to do was sell and be client facing. And I really have always liked the back end of organization and building efficiency. I like to, know how I can make something better and how a customer can have a better experience. And my whole philosophy around that was to try and help as many people as possible. So i.e. write as many loans as possible for the business. And then secondly to that is then how I moved into Auctus was I was fortunate enough to be given a redundancy, and then it opened up my eyes and an opportunity that I wanted to help brokers be better. And I think that there's some phenomenal coaches or leaders in the industry. And I think brokers are always yearning to be better. And, I think the great thing at the moment is we're winning the battle for market share. But one thing that I know about the 20 years in being in the industry, we definitely haven't won the war. So if I can help brokers be better, customers have better experience, then we've just stayed the preferred channel. And that's my goal.
Love it. You've been really successful in coaching, and I know that there's a lot of brokers who are interested in coaching, and it might be it might be when they sell their business or something, they transition careers into coaching. Did you know that you were going to be a good coach, and did you have much experience in coaching people?
Well, it's funny enough, I actually have the same coach myself that I've used for 20 years. So I think it's probably a mindset thing. You either like to impart knowledge or you like to do. So I like to impart knowledge because I think it kind of, it's probably in my DNA. I come from a long tenure of teachers in my family. So maybe this was my version of being a teacher. Thankfully, I'm not teaching any of the youth of today because I don't know how good I would be, how patient I would be with that. But yeah, I do like helping mortgage brokers and, really like to see their dreams come true.
So your coach, is that like a business coach or what's that?
Oh, I'd sit there and say she's more of a mindset coach. We have a 30-minute, I kind of call it like a 30-minute therapy session every month. And it's just trying to really dial in what's going on and what's the limitation that I have myself personally. And when we talk around what I do with businesses is most businesses know exactly what they need to do. There's just something holding them back, whether it's, the skill, the know-how, or, maybe the mindset to take them to the next level. And that's where I try and really assist them.
Love it. And at Auctus, how many brokers are you coaching right now?
At the moment, I think I was looking at it yesterday. There's 32 active clients at the moment. We work with clients on a raft of different ways. Some clients, it's an ongoing basis for a tenure, and then some clients are on a project basis. I like to have it structured that clients can graduate in and then graduate out, and then they'll circle back when they need more assistance. One thing that I'm fortunate about being in the industry for so long is most problems a broker will come across, I've either solved for another client or I'll know where to direct them to solve the problem. So I try and help brokers not go down too many rabbit holes. And the most common one is normally technology. So ideally, if I can kind of steer them in the right direction or help them make sure they don't make probably a really big mistake.
Nice. Okay, I've got questions about systems that you recommend for brokers, so we'll get stuck into that then.
Okay.
But I think you make an interesting point that, a lot of the questions and challenges that come up as a mortgage broker have been navigated by somebody at some point. From what I've found is that most brokers want kind of, a successful business that's profitable, and they don't necessarily want to reinvent the wheel, but they still have these predictable challenges that come up. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree. I sit there and say, I'm sorry if you're not a Tesla driver or a Tesla lover. I kind of sit there and say, I'm not Elon Musk. right?
Yeah,
I'm not thinking up SpaceX. I'm not thinking up. All I try and say is that we're not reinventing the wheel. We just try and be the WD-40 that makes the wheel go faster. And I think that, as we're seeing, as we were discussing earlier, is the industry is evolving so quick. And I think that brokers, if we're not trying to evolve with it, you're going to get left behind. I think that, a good measuring stick over the last decade was if a mortgage broker could write 100 mil. I think that a good measuring stick for the next 3 to 5 years is a broker writing 200 mil, but not necessarily for double the head count. So, efficiencies and technology is going to play a really big play into the future, I envisage.
totally. And what sort of brokers do you like to work with?
It's a really good question. One, a really key one is coachable. And I know that sounds like a bit of a fluffy word, but the brokers that have been able to scale super quickly are super reflective, and they'll kind of check their ego at the door and be like, hey, I don't know how to do everything. I want to know what's the different way. I want you to be a sounding board. I want you to challenge me, and then let's go implement. Just because just because you've done something a certain way for the last 5 or 10 years and you've got a bit of success, doesn't mean it's actually going to hold up for the next 5 or 10 years. So I think, always looking for that 1% improvement is the key.
Right. So they've got to be open to the coaching rather than, think they know everything when they come in.
Totally. If they do know everything, I probably won't speak to them. They probably won't come to me because I'm not here to pump up any tires. I'm here to, where the rubber hits the road, drive change for the betterment of themselves, their clients, their staff, and their future.
Yeah, love it. So are we talking about like a solo broker, small team, or some giant brokerage?
Yeah, I'd probably sit there and say that my sweet spot is a broker that's writing over 100 mil a year, normally with a few support staff or maybe looking to get their first or second. And then I go all the way up to, big brokerages. I think brokers think that their problems are only solo to them. I think brokers' challenges in the industry, they're universal. It doesn't matter if you're a big brokerage with, 20 or 30 loan writers, or you're a one-man band, writing everything all yourself. The challenges you face, they're just are the same, they're just at a different scale.
Okay. And how long has Auctus been going for?
4.5, just over 4.5 years. So
well
it's
done.
been it's been a whirlwind. It's grown faster than I ever dreamt. I thought it was going to be just a small, one-man operation, and now I'm leading a team of 12. Half of the team's offshore and half of the team's onshore.
That's awesome. What sort of roles did they do?
Well, we have 3 key pillars we'd talk about: system and process. So trying to get the most out of the technology. The next one is training. So I think once we build out the systems, I always try and say to people is there's no use building a system if you don't know how to use it properly. Most people will utilize whatever system they're using as a lodgement tool only. And the system has so much more capability of that. But most people get too caught up in just lodging deals, where I want to try and teach them more about their systems and processes. And then our real high performers, they're continually coming back and refining and checking, and they're just looking for a little, that microscopic improvement so that they can do more deals. And then the last piece of the puzzle for us is the people. If you've got that structure in place, then the people become the next tap or the next lever to pull on. One thing I always like to bring you back to is McDonald's is the most successful business in the world. The reason why it's the most successful businesses in the world is you can get a Big Mac anywhere in the world and it's the same outcome. So that's what I think mortgage broking should be. We should be having the same journey along the way, whether it's a 20 grand top up or a $2 million loan, and it should be predictable. And I think where brokers get caught up in is they keep getting thought in their mind that every customer is different. Yeah, the credit advice is different, but the journey should be exactly the same. And that's what I think the difference between the good and the great brokers do. The good brokers will get the deal done. The great brokers, it will be predictable and they'll just do more of it.
Totally. All right, let's get into your strong suit, which seems to be systems and processes and the tech stack.
Yeah.
So what software stack are you recommending for your brokers right now?
The software stack is, first things first, get the most out of your aggregator platform. One thing that brokers traditionally don't do, we get this thing called shiny ball syndrome. When there's a new piece of technology out, every broker thinks they need it. 4.5 years ago, it was everybody needed HubSpot. And then Monday came in and everybody needed Monday. But then when I really truly ask people, what are they looking to achieve with that piece of technology? Most of the time it can be achieved within their aggregator platform if they know how to utilize it. One thing that technology can't do, it can't be bent. So it's linear. So sometimes what we need to do is have a process change. I always say, get the most out of your aggregator platform in relation to workflow management, automation of tasks and communication. Whatever, email platform to keep customers engaged. I think mortgage broking, there's a lot of brokers that have been focusing their energy of being a hunter and gatherer. So the lead comes in, they get the deal set. That's it. I'm about trying to nurture your client or your database and trying to look for those new opportunities. I think that if you're looking to farm your database, you should be able to easily grow 10 to 15% just by engaging customers. There's platforms, your MailChimp, your ActivePipes, they're platforms that are very simple to use, but people don't spend the time to utilize them. And I think if you've got a customer who's a raving fan, and what I rate somebody as a raving fan is a customer who you're receiving trail from. If you're receiving trail from them, and this kind of works back to how you get funding for them, Simon, you should be speaking to them. If it's email, or if it's just actually picking up the phone. So what I want to really try and help brokers do is get more time back so that they can have more meaningful conversations and, pick up the phone. Because I think 80% of mortgage brokers, being at the right place at the right time. Majority of the mortgage brokers in the industry are selling similar, if not the same products. So you need to be at the forefront of your customer. And if you're not at the forefront and they choose to go to another broker or the bank direct, I kind of feel like that's because you weren't doing what you should have been doing. And that's what we get paid trail for. It's a deferred establishment fee. So maintain the relationship.
100%. You mentioned using the aggregator software. In general, how critical is it for a broker to choose the correct aggregator, and how much does it matter?
I kind of believe there's 3 really key principles the aggregator should give you: bank agreements, pay your commissions, and a lodgement tool. Okay. Each aggregator can provide those 3 things, and they're just at various levels. I personally think that there's some technology suites that are slightly better, but then some are slightly superior in other ways.
Okay.
I don't think it necessarily, I wouldn't necessarily just be choosing an aggregator just because of the tech. It's also the relationship as well. Having somebody to lean on when you need help. If you're a mortgage broker and you're a solo broker, it's a pretty lonely world out there. So having that community and having people within the aggregator, I actually think super beneficial. And that's what I would be looking for if I was going into be a broker today is, what's the community, or who can I lean on for assistance and guidance? And you might sit there and be a seasoned broker writing 100 mil and think you don't need to lean on somebody. You actually do. You really do.
Yeah, so I could do a lot of brokers who are super happy with their aggregator and they'd never leave because they've got really strong relationships there.
Yeah. I sit there and say, is like, if you're getting the most out of your platform and the relationships are good, then, I don't see the benefit in rocking the apple cart. But, when I work with a broker, the last thing we ever talk about is aggregation changing. It's normally like, hey, can we get the most out of our systems and processes where we are now? And if we get to a point where we really can't, then that's a conversation for a later day. But I'm not in the aggregation game. I'm in the, hey, let's get you to be the best that you can be in your current environment. And sometimes, if a aggregator platform has an enhancement and another one doesn't, sometimes it's just a cost of doing business. And that's where we try and teach them, hey, it's a commercial decision. You're happy where you are. This takes a little bit longer, but it will still get the outcome you need.
Is there an aggregator that you find yourself working with more than the others?
Not particularly. I'm agnostic to aggregators. I've got, I've known Delbor, who has developed Sales Tracker. So I've known him for nearly, probably when I started getting into operations. I he's a person that I kind of feel is a futurist in the industry, and all he's trying to do is help brokers be better. And that means by following systems and processes. And I can do that across any platform in relation to it in various different ways. But yeah, I get the most out of the aggregator platform is probably where I'd go to first.
Sure. What's the best software for brokers?
The
best tool? What's the one
I
that's
think
made the
it's
biggest
probably
impact?
hard for anybody to sit there and say over the last 5 years that quickly hasn't been the best tool in the market. Like it's been, I remember when I first saw it at the start, I was just like blown away. And continually, that's probably the one that the brokers talk to me about the most. I'm still pleasantly surprised when I come across a broker who's not using it.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I think that's probably, it's market leading at the moment. And I think it's, everybody's going to try and develop something to try and catch up to it. But at the moment, it's, I would take the most favorable tool in the market at the moment.
Okay. What's the most overhyped tool that brokers are wasting money on?
I would sit there and say HubSpot.
Mate, I use HubSpot.
Mate, you're not a mortgage broker.
Yeah, true. But I think I kind of get what you mean. I mean, like I use it mainly for basically captures information and then creates a deal board for me so that I can manage loans going through a system. Like it's pretty basic what I'm using it for.
And it's great that you utilize that in that way. Like I utilize Monday for our project management.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing that I say to people is like, I've got one client in particular, they live by HubSpot, but it is so built out. It's so automated. There's so many nurture sequences built into it. And guess what? The last piece of the puzzle is getting it integrated to the aggregator software.
Yeah.
Where I try and steer people away from is if you're not going to get it integrated, you're just going to create more work for yourself. And then secondly to that, what's the right source of truth? So I'd probably say HubSpot, and also the cost of it's
not cheap.
Exorbitant.
Okay, let's talk about building a team for brokers. Do you have any particular stages that you keep in mind? E.g., a broker's writing X number per month, and then they should hire X staff member. How do you think about that process of building a team, say from an early stage business through to an established broking company?
Yeah, I'd sit there and say hire well before you need to, or well before you think you need to, because when you hire staff, it's a journey because they need to unlearn to learn. Okay, and it's a journey to get capacity out of them. So if you hire the most technically skilled person today, they're not really going to offer you much value for the first month. I'd probably sit there and say it probably takes up to 3 months until you actually get that work in synergy. So realistically, if you're starting out today, I think once you get to the point where you're consistently settling 5 deals a month, you should be looking to get your first team member. I measure efficiency and success in mortgage broking based on the number of deals you do, not the dollar value, because dollar value is based on geography.
Yeah.
So a broker in Double Bay could be doing, 1 deal a month. And, I've got a client in Bunbury who's on average settling 25 to 30 deals a month. His operation's got to be a bit slicker to get the same sort of output. So that's where I measure success in mortgage broking.
Yeah, that's interesting. And if you're a broker who's sort of starting up, should your first hire be another broker or should you be going for admin staff?
Support, in my opinion. I would be building out your support function as a priority. I would only be looking to start hiring your first broker when you've actually hit full capacity yourself with your support functions and that there's an overflow of leads, right? I think there was an old, when I got into the industry coming on 20 years ago, there was always this idea, hey, hire brokers and take clips off the top of them.
Yeah.
And they'll just stay around. I think brokers are now really evolving. You've got to actually have an employee value proposition. So I think if you've got an overflow of leads and you're providing a support function, there are two things brokers really struggle with. Lots of new brokers into the industry or even seasoned brokers, they struggle with lead generation. And most brokers don't want to do the admin. And I'd sit there and say to people, don't do the admin. I ask a broker, I'll ask you this question, Simon. How much do you think a broker's worth an hour?
Thing is, they've got so many expenses that you really need to charge a lot. So the hourly rate needs to be like $250 an hour.
Yeah, I'd sit there. I was with a group the other day, and they were saying, like, a broker said to me $2,000 an hour, and I was like, perfect. Yes, I agree. I think it's $500 up to $1,000, right? But you're only worth that when you're doing that work, right? And when you're doing that $1,000 an hour work, that's normally delivering strategy to customers, or doing your networking. Where brokers, their first big glass ceiling is they start getting caught up in the admin. When they're doing, spending hours late at night doing an AOL or a loan app, or they're ordering valuations and pricing, I'd sit there and say, guys, there's support. You need to be getting support sooner. Brokers really need to narrow in what their skill set is, and it should be the strategy piece or the lead generation piece, and try and build support functions around all of the other aspects.
Totally agree with that. You mentioned that you measure a broker's capacity based on number of deals rather than loan amount in a year or book amount in a year. So I'll stick with that way of thinking about things. How many loans do you think a new broker should be writing per month in their first year, second year, third year of operations?
Yeah, I think in your first year, realistically, you probably want to get to the point of settling 50 plus deals in your first year. Your second year should be 100 plus. You should be able to double that. And then your third year should at least be 150 to 200, in my opinion. And if you break that down, that, if you're doing 100 deals over a year, let's allow 2 months for holidays, let's call it Christmas shutdown and a financial year shutdown. That's 10 deals a month. It's not too crazy. We're not talking about, groundbreaking numbers there. But, when you get to the point that you're really starting to move, is that 20 to 30 deals a month. And I think it's also from a skill perspective. If you're really not getting close to that 50 in the first year, I'd really struggle that you're actually going to get the exposure you need to really get to that next level. Anybody that's getting into the industry, my piece of advice is go and work for the highest performing broker you can find. Don't go out and do it. Don't go out and start it for yourself. Go and do your apprenticeship with the best broker you can. And it's kind of like the reason why high performing sports athletes try and train with their competitors, because they want to be the best. And that would be my piece of advice to anybody trying to get into the industry.
That's great advice. Is there an ideal broker to support ratio?
I actually think the metric that I have in my head, and it works really well for my clients, and it's based on the volume of deals they're doing every month. They're doing anywhere from 20 to 30 deals a month, and their support is 1 broker to 3 support.
Okay.
And that would be a combination of onshore and offshore. And the reason why is the brokers that, the high performing brokers that I work with, efficiency is built from doing a production line. Okay. You can run the old mentality in broking is you can run a file from end to end, and that's the best way to do it. It can be done, but it's not the best way. What I implore brokers to do is to hire people to become subject matter experts. So they become a specialist in a particular portion of the process. So we always try and say, hey, somebody has a primary role. This is their primary role. This is the role that they can do with their eyes closed. There's minimal oversight from you. There's very little margin of error. And then they have a secondary role. The reason why we think 3 is the right number is if one person goes away, guess what? You only lose 33% capacity. If you're a 1-to-1 and that one person goes away, how much capacity do you lose? 100. So when we see our high performers, they'll try and get to that 3 number as quickly as we can. And then on that, then it's trying to get to 6, because then you're building the next generation.
Yeah, I love it.
Support.
Yeah. I mean, if you're doing 20 to 30 deals per month and you've got 3 people working for you, maybe 1's onshore, 2 offshore, that's a pretty lean business, and that's good volume. I can see how that would be nice and profitable.
Totally. Absolutely. And there, I think it gives them more opportunity to spend more time. What my goal is at Auctus, and I happily say it to people all the time, my goal is to build a broker that writes 100 mil a year, working 2 days a week. Everybody says, lots of people initially say to me, that's impossible. But I was like, if you've got the right support functions and you've got the broker doing that $1,000 an hour work, it's 100% possible. And I think every broker should be really working to the idea that the wheels keep moving when they're not around. Answering, I always chuckle to myself when I see on someone's LinkedIn that they say they're available 24/7. I actually think that that's probably doing themselves a disservice. Scarcity is a really good sales tool. So if you say that you're available on Tuesday and Thursday to do appointments, guess what? People will, if they see value in what you do, they will move mountains to see you. But saying you're available 24/7, I don't think it really sells you as much as you could.
I think that's a really good point. And yeah, if you can do 100 mil a year with a lean team and only work 2 days a week, that is an unreal lifestyle. And I'd say you're probably living the Australian dream. You're not going to be Warren Buffett, but particularly if you live regional or semi-regional, the world or the beach or the golf course is your oyster. It's pretty good. Okay, so I speak to a lot of brokers who are taking the next step towards hiring, and I often get asked, how do I find the right sort of people? How do you recommend, or how do you see good brokers build teams?
It's so funny to think about it, but I think some tried and tested systems still work. I would say all of the hires that we've done for our brokers over the last 2 years has been Seek. It works. A good job ad, and then just being really clear around what you're looking for. I think before you even get to the job ad, you've got to be really clear around what the process is and then what hole this person's going to fill. Okay? Because if you're not clear about that in the first instance, you don't know who you're hiring for what reason. So once you're really clear around that, then it's just about making sure that that person that you are hiring is going to fill that void. And then what's that going to take off your plate?
Yeah, 100%. Seek works. I mean, I feel like there's something about Seek that also looks quite legitimate as well. It's like, okay, well, if you're paying for a Seek ad, you really are hiring. You're not just kind of dipping your toe in the water thinking, oh, I'll just meet some candidates and see what happens.
Totally. I agree. I normally, even for my own business, I've hired people just so I'd sit there. I hate, not a woo-woo word, but I base it on a vibe. I'll meet somebody and I'll be like, I want you in my business. And then I'll try and create a new role for them because they're the right sort of person for me. But sometimes I think that what I've seen so successful is when brokers are so structured around what they want to achieve, matching the person becomes a really easy piece of the puzzle. I think brokers have really maybe got it wrong is not being clear around the role and then just trying to hire for experience. Just because somebody's worked in mortgage broking for 20 years doesn't mean they're good at what they do.
Yeah. So could we dig into that a little bit? So how are we identifying if somebody is skilled at the role that you need them to do?
Yeah, I'd sit there and say there's two things that we look for. Attitude.
Yeah.
So they've got to have the attitude to want to learn, right? Because if somebody wants to come into your business and their mentality is, I did it over at XY mortgage brokering and we should do it that way. That I'm all for feedback because feedback is great, but just because they did it over there doesn't mean it's going to work over here. So I think attitude's a really big thing and they've got to be coachable, and then aptitude. So if someone's got to be smart enough, someone's got to be able to do the job, right? If you've got a really robust process and then someone's coachable, and then they're smart enough, you can teach them anything. So I think that's probably the part that we've helped a lot of brokers go down the pathway of making sure that we're getting the right person, because with those two fundamentals, the experience is normally come at a little bit of a lesser requirement. But if we are hiring a particular role, we disc profile and I think that's so valuable. If anyone hasn't done disc, they should do disc. It's a really good way to understand more about yourself. And then more importantly, if you do disc and you understand who you're hiring, make sure that you know how to lead them. And then secondly to that, I think if you're hiring anybody in any role, there's no restriction to give them some sort of skills test. Make sure that they know what they're talking about. We have some clients that will, get on a video call and they'll want somebody to do a servicing calculator. That's not unreasonable. And if somebody doesn't want to do that, and they're a potential candidate, it's probably a bit of a red flag.
You mentioned the disc profile. That's some form of like a personality test, is it?
Yeah, correct. So we seem to identify that most salespeople we utilize birds in ours. So Most salespeople are peacocks. Who would have thought? Who would have
I
thought? I
know,
know,
right?
groundbreaking.
Mm.
Most offshore team members are doves, so they're a little bit more gentler. And then, you've got some eagles in there that are just really task orientated. So I think it's just really good to really understand the person that you're hiring and where they'll fit into the business. And I even think that, people evolve as they
Yeah.
get more skills and develop leadership.
I assume you want a mix of bird types, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want them all to be eagles.
I think there's a lot of brokerage offices where the brokers are the peacocks, which works, but then you've got to have the other mix in relation to it. And I think there's, different skills for different people. Like traditionally, most salespeople are not attention to detail focused. When you're submitting a loan application, you want to make sure the person who's helping you submit it is very attention to detail focused.
Yeah, 100%. All right, let's talk about marketing and actually getting business. Do you have any thoughts on what fraction of a broker's revenue should be reinvested into marketing?
I think it should be at a minimum of 5%. You can't sell a secret. So if they don't, just because you've done a loan for somebody and you're not, why should they come back to you? And that's probably where I'm trying to sit there and say that you go do that. I think there's a number of different ways to do it, whether it's email marketing, whether it's actually hiring a person on retention. I was speaking to a broker the other day from ACT. He's got a book of 400 mil. His runoff's about 23%. He's having to write 100. He wrote 130 mil last year for his book to only grow by 20 mil.
Speaking my language, Christian. Yeah.
So what he's doing at the moment, he's effectively having to write 130 mil, which is no easy feat in any stretch, right?
No.
To maintain his livelihood and grow by 20. So the first hole that we're trying to plug for him is the retention piece. It's like, hey, what can we do? And the first thing that we worked out was he's been too busy on the front end, hunting and gathering, trying to get new clients, that he's neglected people on the back end.
So has he employed anybody to help him manage the existing clients?
2 staff today, someone to focus on data entry, someone to focus on settlements and retention.
Yeah.
And I would sit there and say, watch this space. Our goal will be to get his runoff, I would comfortably say, around the 15% mark in the next 12 months. And I think that's a pretty solid amount. What are you seeing as an industry standard for runoff?
Yeah, such a good question. So there's a difference between gross runoff and net runoff. Gross runoff is essentially loans being closed, but some of those clients will come back. They'll sell a property, they'll buy another property, or they'll just have a life change, but they'll appear back in your group, in your book. So gross runoff, it's pretty normal to see like 25 or even 30% gross runoff. But net runoff, I've seen some really good books where the net runoff is 8%. I think if you're anywhere between, say, 10 and 15, you're doing really well. That's definitely where you want to try and get to. And to your point, if you've got a leaky bucket, you're working so hard just to stand still. And then all that proactive work that this particular broker is doing, 130 mil in a year is fantastic. That could be 200 clients if he's in the Canberra area.
Yeah.
But he's only growing by 20. So, that's a big problem. I completely agree with that needing to be a focus.
Yeah, I think his the goal for him is to really tighten that up, and then we actually believe there's actually going to be greater opportunity into his, to diversify, because he hasn't been speaking to this audience of raving fans. So, hey, plug up the leaking bucket, and then, hey, we've got a new diversification opportunity because I'm actually got some time to speak to people is probably the number one priority we're focusing on.
Yeah, totally. I mean, my thoughts on this slowing and changing market are that the brokers that have the existing books, like this example that we're talking about, they're sitting on an absolute goldmine relative to brokers who are always relying on prospecting and originating new deals.
Yeah.
Because the whole investor market is going to slow down, or it already has slowed down. And if you've got an existing pool of clients, maybe this particular broker has 800 people they can talk to, there's going to be refinancing opportunities. There's going to be renovations happening. There's going to be all sorts of things. Those brokers are going to want to hold debt, and you can still look after them, and still, retaining them is just going to be so valuable.
I think it was I think it was a podcast that I listened to many years ago with Ash Playstead and James Bagley. And I think that the stat that they said for every 500 names you had on your database, that should be 100 mil worth of new lending every year. And I actually think that stat's pretty close to it. And I think it's just about trying to make the time to have these conversations. In the changing market, I actually have seen this as being the greatest opportunity for to differentiate the high performers from let's call it the paddlers in the pool. The high performers actually are doubling down on their strategy, and they actually realize it's the greatest opportunity to get even more market share. So I would implore anybody in this time, don't be looking at trying to cut costs, work out where you can spend money in the right way to help grow.
Totally. What are you seeing the successful brokers do from a marketing perspective?
It's really interesting. If you asked me 5 years ago, did I think influencers would be a thing? I would have said no way. It was a fad that was going to turn very, very quickly. Maybe I'm in the sweet spot where I've got so many influencer clients, but it actually works. Like it genuinely does work. My advice to anybody on this is if social media is not your thing, that's fine, but you've got to be better at something else. Okay. My advice on it, as well as if one of my clients is Pete Savage, it's really anybody that ever wants to know about Pete's journey, give him a call because he loves it. He loves talking about it, but he talks about his first ever videos when he goes back and makes his skin crawl and cringe. But he's, thousands of videos deep now. It's like a perfect art. So what I try and sit there is we've all got to start somewhere. I don't mind where you start, but keep going. One thing I don't see value in is people going down this pathway of like, I'm going to do the socials, whatever your social platform is, and they do it for a month, 2 months, 3 months, 12 months, and then it stops. It doesn't work that easy. It doesn't move that quickly. How long have you been developing your socials for?
Well, I mean, my business is less than a year old. But I'm cranking. I'm putting something out every single day. And I've had a business in the past where I had a big Instagram following. So it's not my first rodeo when it comes to creating content. And it is a big focus of mine.
And it's always just about getting it out, right?
Yeah.
I always try and say to people,
you have to be consistent.
Yeah. I say to people, it's like my platform is LinkedIn. So I'm doing a minimum of 3 pieces a week. It's my wheelhouse. That's where I sit. But I sit there and say, is like, I know where my market is. I know how to engage with my market. Just because somebody else is doing something, don't use that as the catalyst that it works. I think, some brokers that I know quite well, they're really focused around community engagement. So they're sponsoring the local school, sponsoring the local soccer club. Go to where your audience is, whether it's eyeballs on, TikTok, Instagram, or if it's the local sporting club. Whatever you do it with a full heart and continually turn up.
Yeah. I mean, sponsoring the primary school or the footy club for 1 year is not going to really move the needle, is it? But if they're constantly seeing your face and seeing that you're investing in the community and you're always turning up, that'll build and build, I suppose.
Definitely.
I mean, do you have any thoughts on how often brokers should be posting or sharing on social media?
My philosophy is minimum of 3 times a week. At a minimum, if you can get to the point that you're doing it daily or multiple times a day, that would be, that would probably be the real sweet spot. But again, just going back to where your audience is located and, be authentic. Like every broker every high performing broker that I work with, they've got a niche and they just continually play to the niche. If you're going to be a generalist, I think you're going to really struggle in the market. You're going to really struggle to differentiate. You're out there. Most of the high performers I work with are also charging a fee for service. And I actually think that's, a really good way to differentiate themselves from the market. I always ask people, what's the difference between a Kia and a Mercedes? Come on, Simon, what's the difference? They're both cars.
One's made in Germany, one's made in Korea. The price, it's potentially the quality.
Yeah, perception of value. So if you think you're a Lamborghini, then be a Lamborghini.
Yeah.
If you want to be a Hyundai XL, be a Hyundai XL. But, I think, where I've seen the clients that when they get to the point that they're building that audience and they're generating more and more leads, what we're trying to really do is narrow in even more who is our ideal client. The reason why we want our ideal client, because they're the ones that we can knock out of the park every single time. When
Yeah.
something's a little bit outside of their box or their realm of expertise, they'll look to try and send it on to somebody else or try and get the customer to conform to their ideal client.
Yeah, it's true. Also, I think there's an enthusiasm factor too. I mean, I get absolutely lit up when I'm talking to a broker who I'm like, you are off to the races. You know, we're going to help you turbocharge this. You're an absolute machine. Let's get going. And so you just want to help that person so much because you're so pumped for them. It's if you can relate to that particular type of borrower and you really feel and understand them, it's so much more enjoyable doing your job.
Totally. I think the brokers that I've seen grow the most, they genuinely care about the person.
Yeah.
So if the goal is that the person wants to get their first home and you're in that first home buyer market, get in there and celebrate with them. You know, it's a big achievement. Or if it's to build wealth through property. I know the investor market's slumping for the moment, but these are all cycles. You know, what we're going through right now is this is going to be the third cycle of contraction that I've seen. But I also think it's probably the greatest opportunity that I've seen in my tenure.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on employing a PAYG broker versus a commission-only broker.
Great question. It's always gets asked to me. A commission-only broker is probably the least riskiest because it's probably the least amount of outlay yourself. The challenge that you're always going to have with a commission-only broker is they're essentially working for themselves. So it's then coming back to the control. How much are they going to conform to what you want? In an ideal world, they will. The benefit of having a PAYG broker is you pay them a wage. So you say jump, they should be saying how high. And if not, they're probably not the right person for you. I've seen more of a trend over the last 2 to 3 years of more PAYG brokers. And it's just on the basis that the broker has this support function and they're actually now at the point of turning on the tap to the leads. They just want somebody to facilitate the transaction. So I think PAYG is really making a mark at the moment.
Yeah, I'm certainly in that camp. So thinking about how a broker structures their business, let's say that they're doing about 50 mil per year in loan volume, and they want to get to 150. How should they think about reinvesting in the business versus paying themselves a healthy salary and, you know, taking the profits and putting it somewhere else?
Yeah, it's a really good question because I think everybody's got a different risk appetite in relation to that. I think if you want to build something greater than yourself, then reinvesting in your business should be your vehicle of choice. Most of the brokers that I've seen is for the first 5 years, they're continually pumping as much cash back into their business with the idea that, you know, they'll have the payday either when they sell or that 5 years plus when they're actually sitting back and just managing the business. So my strategy to anyone is for the first 5 years is, you know, you've got to pay your minimum living cost and, you know, your quality of life. But I think year 5 to 10, I'd start to look to pull out some equity and reinvest it in other strategies.
Yeah, I think that's a good sort of ballpark kind of time frame, right? Like 5 years, you still want to be able to go and have a beer and a pizza. Yeah, but
Or if you're a broker from Sydney or Melbourne, probably go to Greece or Italy for the winter months.
yeah, no, I forgot to book my Europe trip this year. Yeah, exactly. Well, you know, maybe you put that on hold for a couple of years, depending on how well you're doing. No, I think it's it's an interesting discussion, and it will be unique for each person. But I mean, as long as if your trail book is growing, your business is potentially growing in value so much. And I think a lot of brokers overlook that, and they don't realize that, you know, an extra 100 million in your loan book is potentially 600 grand when you sell your business. So that's, you know, that should really.
I think it's really hard. One of the in factors is that brokers get that I've seen is they we think there's 3 horizons in broking. The first is competency. So that's probably up to your 50 mil mark, right? And you're probably, you know, not that dramatic, but living on baked beans, right? Then the next horizon we call is growth. And that's normally where you're actually starting to make really good money. but it's when you're actually going on holidays and still taking your laptop.
Mm. Yeah.
Most brokers spend their whole life in that phase and they're happy with it. They
That's
think
right.
they've got a business, but they've actually got a job. The only
Yeah.
difference is they're their own boss, which on a good day you like them, at the bad day you might not. But where I think real opportunity lies is in when you get to scale. So when you actually build a brokerage, what I think we're going to see in this consolidation phase is I think we're going to see a lot more high performing brokers, buddy up with somebody they like and build a super brokerage. The benefit of that is better resources, greater efficiency, and also for them, de-risk their business slightly. It takes, decision fatigue off the shelf because there might be 2 or 3 brokers that are all moving in the same direction, and that allows them to move even faster.
You mentioned before engagement fees and that, some brokers, that's a good strategy for differentiating themselves. What do you think about charging an engagement fee for a new client?
I'm all for it. I think every broker should do it. Some people will sit there and say to me, hey, then we're going to have this challenge with the banks around why should we get paid up fronts? Well, I believe that majority, if we think about a timeline to get a home loan, it's normally 0 to 90 days from initial inquiry to settlement, right? And that's for a refinance, give or take, right? You're traditionally not getting paid for that another 30 days afterwards, maybe even longer, depending on your aggregators' commission cycles. So that's 120 days you've been working before you get paid.
Without getting paid. Yeah.
Yeah. So for our clients that are focused on hyper growth, having a fee for service allows them to actually get paid for some of their work up front, and their success getting the deal set is, the cherry on top. So I believe, I'd be charging it from day one. People will sit there and they'll try and argue with me until they're blue in the face saying, my clients won't charge it. My clients won't charge it. I sit there and say to people, charge your first 3 clients and then tell me what your thoughts are on it. They'll charge the first 3 and then guess what? They never turn back. I think it's one of those things that it's hard. You build a bigger challenge in your head. You've actually just got to start. And then whatever that fee is, you can charge it however. I've heard of fees from anywhere between $500 to $2,500. I was speaking to a broker today. Some are pay upon settlement, and the really confident ones, you have to pay it before submission, and it really clears out the tire kickers. One thing I see that, a customer who pays it, they actually see value in it. And in another sense as well is they've already paid you a fee. So they're actually buying loyalty to you. Why would I go to another broker when I've already paid Simon $2,500? They're going to sit there and go, no, I'm not going to another broker. I'm going to go to Simon because I've already paid him this $2,500. And if the broker's not charging them, they're going to sit there and question why. Is that broker as skilled as the one that I've already got? And I'd probably sit there and say, maybe not.
Yeah. Okay. I think it's very interesting. It definitely boils down to confidence. And, that's where it's a huge advantage being exposed to somebody like you or being part of a community where everyone's doing it because it normalizes it.
Totally.
I've asked a lot of people this question, Christian. You're the first one to very confidently say, yes, brokers should be charging this. So I think that's a really interesting perspective.
I love the point that you brought up. It is based on confidence. I believe it wholeheartedly, but the confidence normally comes when you've got a robust system and process and you can deliver every single time, right? If you're not confident in, delivering, then it's going to be harder for you to sell something. And I always say to people is, hey, guess what? If you charge somebody a fee and somebody has a inferior experience, guess what you can do? Refund them. How many of my clients have refunded? They say, we deliver every time, so we don't. So
yeah,
I think there's an opportunity, but get your house in order before you start charging a fee.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I love it. Now we're going to move into a bit of a sort of rapid fire section of questions. First one is, what's the biggest mistake brokers make in their first year of operations?
Saying yes to everything and not niching down. So you can't be everything to everybody. I think kind of work out what your passion is. Is it first home buyers? Is it investors? Is it complex self-employed? Everybody's got something that they actually makes them tick. Find that, stick to it, and A fast no. I think that's
Fast no.
probably a really struggle. Brokers have this idea. I don't know how to do this, but Simon, I'm sure I can find you a solution. And then they get so invested in it, they kind of keep the person on the hook, and then they need to find a solution. So I think a fast no is the solution.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Thoughts on regional versus city broking?
I've got a combination of everything. I've got clients in Wagga, Bunbury. I don't know. Could you call Adelaide regional or is it metropolitan?
I don't know. So halfway between.
I think they all worked. Some of our more regional brokers, they just get going. They're part of their community. They're the go-to in the area. I don't think it really makes a difference. And then if you're, in the digital age we are right now, you can talk to anybody anywhere. So
Sure.
I don't think it necessarily having a footprint in a CBD, or a shop front's a requirement. I think being really clear around where you sit in the market is the requirement to growth and success.
Yeah, 100%. What's one thing that you would change about the broking industry?
Barrier to entry needs to be higher. I want it to be higher, and I think brokers should essentially, like I said, anyone who wants to get into the industry, my advice is for them to go and work under a broker. I think that it should be a diploma, and you have to, it should be 12 months you've worked under a broker before you actually can write a loan. That's my opinion.
Yeah, we're very aligned. What does the future look like? And are mortgage brokers still around in 20 years' time?
Yeah, I think they will be. I think AI and open banking is going to make life easier in some aspects for bank and broker because we're going to have greater information. But, there's a reason why, every night we can order food on Uber Eats, right?
Mm.
You don't have to talk to somebody. You can even tell the person to leave it at the front door. But we still have restaurants. People still trust somebody's opinion on what to eat or what to drink. And I think that as we continue to deliver superior service, we've got the opportunity to cement ourselves. If our service becomes inferior, then we're at risk.
Okay, good answer. Final one. What do you know now that you wish somebody had told you when you started your career?
Mortgage broking is not as easy as you think. I think part of the challenge that we have the new to industry brokers is we're sold this dream that you're going to make a lot of money really quickly. It's a lot harder than you think. There can be some sleepless nights, but it's extremely fulfilling. If you're in the industry of actually helping people and helping people achieve whatever their goals are, I think it's one of the best industries in the world. And we're very fortunate for what we do and that we get paid well for what we do.
Well said. Christian Paterson of Auctus Coaching. Mate, thank you so much for joining. That was awesome.
Thanks so much, buddy. Appreciate it.